I walked into the kitchen of my childhood home, already feeling the weight of everything that wasn't being said. My father, standing at the counter, looked just like he always had. Tall, broad-shouldered, his firefighter's build still intact, though I could see the age in the lines of his face, the graying hair at his temples. He was flipping through a magazine, an effort to look busy while everyone else milled around the house. I hadn't been home in months. Between work, case files, and the demands of being a social worker, it felt like I was always somewhere else. But this was Dad's 60th birthday, and I couldn't skip it. As usual, Mom was sitting at the table, slightly off to the side, one hand resting on the edge, as if waiting for someone to remember her presence. Her eyes were unfocused, distant, and the vague confusion on her face had become all too familiar in the last few months. Dad, though, he was the same as ever, loud, commanding, at the center of everything. The man who'd always been the one to steer conversations, control situations, make everyone laugh. Now, though, there was something different in the way he spoke to her, something I hadn't noticed before. It was in the way he gave her instructions, little things, but enough to send a chill down my spine. Eat your cake, Jane. You're not going to let it go to waste, are you? She blinked, then nodded. But the hesitation in her eyes, the uncertainty, was unmistakable. I saw it. I knew it. And I couldn't shake it. Everyone else was preoccupied, talking about work, the weather, family gossip, but my focus kept pulling back to Mom and Dad. He stood a little too close, took a little too long to help her with simple things, and his words, though gentle, had an edge that set off a low, nagging alarm in my head. I walked over to the counter to cut the cake, trying to push the discomfort aside. That's when I saw it, a small bruise on her wrist, a darkening purple mark, just barely visible beneath her sleeve. My stomach sank, a lump forming in my throat. I had no idea how it got there, but I knew I didn't like it. I kept my voice steady as I asked, "Mom, how'd you get that bruise?" She blinked, her fingers fluttering nervously around her cup. "What bruise?" I leaned closer, my voice lowering. "This one," I said, touching the mark on her wrist lightly. Her gaze flickered between me and Dad. She didn't answer, just looked at me with those cloudy eyes, clearly unsure. I felt the heat rise in my chest, a protective instinct I hadn't realized I still had. I knew I had to ask, I had to confront him. But the fear of the fallout, of what it would do to the family, to him, to everything, held me back. For a long moment, I just stood there, staring at my mother. She wasn't aware enough to offer an explanation, but I couldn't ignore what I was seeing. Whatever was happening, it wasn't right, not by any measure. I wiped my hands on a towel and turned toward Dad, trying to keep my voice level. "You're not hurting her, are you?" He didn't look up from his magazine. "She's fine, Sarah. She's just getting older. Let it go." But I couldn't let it go. Something wasn't right. I had to know what was happening before I found out the hard way. I was still standing at the counter, my eyes locked on my mom's bruise. The knot in my stomach wouldn't loosen, but I had to push it down. The party was still going on. People laughing in the other room, and I was stuck in this space of unease, trying to figure out what the hell was happening. I glanced at Dad again. His focus hadn't shifted. He was pretending to read, but he knew what was happening. He had to. He wasn't stupid, but I couldn't address it now. Not with the whole family here. So I did what I always did, swallowed the words I needed to say, and forced myself back into the role I knew, the one that kept everything together. Mom sat quietly at the table, a drink in her hand, but she wasn't drinking. Her eyes were unfocused again, like she was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere safe, maybe. Somewhere away from whatever was going on in this house. I hated seeing her like this. She used to be the one who made the house feel warm, who gave it life. Now she was a shadow of herself, retreating into a quiet that nobody acknowledged. Dad noticed it too. He didn't care though. "Sarah," he called from across the room, not looking up from his magazine. "Can you help with the drinks? I'm not sure anyone's had enough to eat." I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Yeah, sure." I moved toward the kitchen, taking a deep breath as I stepped around the table. I'd been the peacekeeper for as long as I could remember. Growing up, making sure Mom didn't lose it when Dad was busy with his job, taking care of the house, picking up the slack whenever he got caught up in his own world. That had never changed. As an adult, I had become the one who kept the family from completely falling apart, making sure the tension didn't crack everything wide open. But now it felt like everything was slipping. I passed the platter of food around the table, making small talk with a couple of cousins, but I kept seeing my father's eyes, constantly darting back to Mom. I knew what he was thinking. He was in control of the situation, always the one who made the rules, who dictated the pace, the one who expected everyone to follow his lead. He had that kind of presence. It was what made him a good firefighter, but it was also what made him impossible to deal with as a father or as a husband. I forced myself to smile at an aunt who asked me about work. It was easier than getting lost in the thoughts spinning in my head. The last thing I needed was a meltdown at a birthday party. But that's when Dad turned to me, snapping me out of my thoughts. "Sarah," he said, his tone sharp, "make sure your mom gets some cake before it all goes. She looks like she's losing track of time." I nodded and headed over to her. But as I placed the plate in front of her, she barely acknowledged it, her hand shaking slightly as she reached for it. My stomach churned again. Mom wasn't the person she used to be, and no one was noticing, except me. I took a breath and tried to keep my voice calm. "Mom, you okay?" She gave me that same vacant look, not really seeing me. I took her hand, steadying it, and then turned back to Dad. "Dad," I started, my words heavy with a tension I couldn't ignore anymore. "She's not doing great. You need to?" Before I could finish, Dad stepped up, interrupting me with a loud laugh. "She's fine, Sarah. You're worrying too much. I told you she's just getting older. We're all getting older, can't change that." His words were the same, rehearsed lines he'd always used when things weren't going his way, and I hated hearing them. It was always easier for him to dismiss anything uncomfortable, any real issue, as if his age and his authority made everything else irrelevant. But the thing was, he was the one changing, and I couldn't pretend anymore, not with what I was starting to see. I focused on my mom, trying to ignore the tightness in my chest. She was still staring at the cake, her fingers twitching like she was fighting for control of them. I gently helped her cut a piece, and then I heard Dad's voice again, low and almost casual, like he was trying to drop it in without anyone noticing. "You know, Sarah," he said, his back to me as he rearranged some plates, "when Jean's memory gets worse, we might need to start making some decisions about her assets. You're the responsible one. I'll leave it to you." I froze. My mind skipped over the words like I hadn't heard them, but I had. What the hell was he talking about? I couldn't keep pretending I wasn't hearing the undercurrent in his words. The way he was talking about her assets like they were his to manage, not hers. I didn't know how much of this was him trying to plan for the future, or how much was him seizing an opportunity while she was too confused to resist. I set the knife down hard on the counter, the sound sharp, and turned to face him. "What did you just say?" Dad glanced at me, as if my question was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. I said, "When Jean starts losing her grip on things, we'll have to make sure her finances are in order. You're not going to let things go, are you?" I didn't trust the look in his eyes. It wasn't just a passing comment, it wasn't concern. It was control. And for the first time, I felt the weight of the situation hit me full force. I knew I had to act, but what if I was wrong? What if I was overreacting? I looked at Mom again. She was barely holding it together, too far gone to help herself. And I wasn't going to let him get away with this. Not this time. I didn't know what to say to Dad. My thoughts were a mess, spinning too fast to catch. But I couldn't shake that comment about her assets. It echoed in my head as I turned back to Mom, who was still sitting at the table, staring blankly at the slice of cake in front of her. I helped her out of her chair gently, my hand under her arm to steady her. She didn't say anything as I guided her slowly toward the living room, her fingers trembling slightly against my arm. There was something wrong about the way she moved. It was like she didn't quite know what her body was doing. "Come on, Mom," I murmured, easing her down into one of the armchairs. I sat across from her, waiting for her to focus on me. Her gaze flickered in and out of focus, but her fingers kept twitching, like she was trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. It was small, barely noticeable to anyone who didn't know her, but I saw it. She wasn't just confused, she was distressed. I leaned forward, speaking softly so nobody could overhear. "Mom, what's going on? Are you feeling okay?" She didn't answer at first. Her eyes darted around the room as if she was looking for the right words. Finally, she let out a shaky breath, her voice barely audible. I don't know. I can't remember things sometimes, Sarah," she whispered, her eyes flitting toward the door. I could tell she was afraid. The way she was looking around, trying to find something familiar to hold on to, it was like she was getting lost in her own mind. "Mom," I said again, more urgent now, "what are you forgetting? What's going on?" She looked down at her hands, twisting them together in her lap. The twitching was getting worse. I reached for one of her hands, holding it steady. "Mom, it's okay. Just talk to me." What's happening? Her lips trembled before she spoke, her voice shaky. Your father. He's been having me sign things. Papers. I don't know what, but I signed them. He said I had to. For the house, the money. She trailed off, her face scrunching in confusion. I can't remember. I don't know. My stomach turned over. It was worse than I thought. This wasn't just memory loss. She wasn't forgetting things. She was being coerced, manipulated. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady, though my pulse was pounding in my ears. What kind of papers? What did he make you sign? She shook her head, her eyes distant. I don't know, sweetheart. He kept saying it was for the house, for our savings. He said I had to sign so we wouldn't lose it, but I don't remember exactly. I didn't want to, but he kept telling me it was okay. He said it would be fine. I could feel the blood drain from my face. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. My father, using her confusion to push her into signing things she didn't understand. He was taking advantage of her. I was no longer sure where his intentions ended and where his greed began. I took a deep breath, trying to slow my racing thoughts. Do you remember what the documents were? Anything about money or property? Her eyes searched mine, like she was trying to find a piece of clarity in the fog. I think so. Something about retirement funds and the house, I think. She stopped, shaking her head again. I can't remember. I squeezed her hand. It's okay, Mom. I'm going to fix this. I'll make sure everything's okay. She looked at me, her eyes full of doubt. Can you? He says I don't have to worry about anything, but I do. I feel like I'm losing something. The way she said it hit me in the chest. She didn't even have the words to explain what was happening to her. She was so lost in the confusion, and I was the only one who could see it for what it was. I stood up quickly, my mind racing. I need to get proof. I need to see those papers. Mom barely reacted, but I knew she couldn't stop me. She couldn't protect herself from Dad anymore. He was too strong, too manipulative, and she was too far gone to fight back. I walked toward the desk in the corner, my mind already working. I'd have to be careful. If I made any moves without the right evidence, I could make everything worse. But I couldn't let him keep doing this to her, not when I knew what he was really after. As I pulled open the drawer to Mom's desk, I felt a surge of anger rise up in my chest. How had I not seen it sooner? How had I allowed myself to think it was just aging or forgetfulness, when it was clear now that my father had been exploiting her for months? I rifled through the papers, not knowing exactly what I was looking for, but needing to find something, anything. And there they were, documents, financial papers, the kind I knew well enough to recognize, retirement funds, property transfers, signatures that weren't her own. I grabbed my phone and took pictures, my hands shaking. I had proof now. But what was I going to do with it? The weight of the decision settled over me. Confronting Dad, really confronting him, would change everything. It would tear apart what was left of our family. But I couldn't turn away. Not after seeing Mom so lost, so broken, with no one else to protect her. I straightened up, standing over the pile of papers. My heart was racing, but there was no more time to hesitate. I had to act, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table in the house I'd grown up in, surrounded by the smell of stale coffee and the faint remnants of birthday cake. Mom was still in the living room, her soft, distant murmurs barely audible. She hadn't said much since last night, and I wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a bad one. I had the papers spread out in front of me, every document a confirmation of what I'd feared. I could feel my blood pressure creeping up just looking at them. Retirement funds, property, legal documents that should never have been put in front of her, let alone signed. The research was overwhelming. Financial abuse, the warning signs, the steps I'd need to take to protect Mom. I'd been trained to spot this stuff, trained to help people navigate the worst of situations. But now, with my own mother caught in the middle, it felt like everything I knew had blurred together into a confusing mess. How could I confront my father, the man who'd always been the rock of this family, the one everyone had looked to for answers? How could I accuse him of something like this? But I knew. I knew deep down that his behavior had crossed a line, and I had to protect her, even if it meant destroying whatever was left of the family. I grabbed my phone, scrolling through the articles I'd pulled up about elder financial abuse. It all sounded so textbook, but it was personal now. This wasn't a case on paper anymore. It was my mom, my dad. I needed to act quickly. The more I thought about it, the more urgent it became. If I waited too long, I might lose my chance to stop him. A buzz from my phone snapped me out of my spiraling thoughts. It was a message from Lily, my younger sister. Hey, just checking in. How's everything going with Dad's birthday? I hesitated before I typed a response, my fingers hovering over the keys. Lily was the youngest, the one who'd always stayed out of the chaos, living her life in the city. I didn't want to drag her into this. I'd keep it light. But the truth was, I needed to talk to someone about this. Someone who didn't already know too much. It's fine. Dad's a little off, but I think it's just the birthday stuff getting to him. How's work? I hit send before I could second guess myself, then put the phone down on the table. My heart pounded, waiting for her response, as though talking about it out loud might make it more real. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Yeah, same here. Busy as usual. Let me know if you need anything, okay? The message felt like a band-aid over a wound that needed stitches. I wanted to spill it all to her, everything, but I couldn't, not yet. She'd be too far removed from all of it, and she'd want to fix everything in one go. I stared at the screen for a while, trying to make up my mind, but the more I thought about it, the more I knew. I couldn't avoid this any longer. I had to confront Dad, head on. I'd never let him get away with hurting Mom. But I also needed something concrete. I reached for my phone again and pulled up a lawyer's number I'd saved, someone I'd worked with before in the social work field. I quickly shot off a text. Can you talk? Need advice on how to handle a situation with financial abuse and elder care. The seconds ticked by before my phone buzzed with a response. Sure, call me when you can. I'll walk you through it. I hit the dial button, my heart thudding in my chest. The voice on the other end was calm, methodical. What's the situation? I took a steadying breath. My father has been coercing my mother into signing documents, things about her retirement, property, all of it. She's not in a position to understand it, and I'm worried he's taking advantage of her. Have you documented everything? She asked. I glanced over at the papers on the table, already taking pictures, making sure everything was ready. Yes, I have proof. She paused. Good, you've got the right idea. If you have documentation, you have a chance to protect her. But be careful. If you confront him without full legal support, it could make things worse for your mother. You might need to involve law enforcement sooner rather than later. Her words weighed on me. I already knew the risks, but hearing them out loud made them feel more real. I felt the tension building in my chest. This wasn't just about protecting Mom anymore. This was about protecting myself, too. My father was not the man I thought he was. And I couldn't go easy on him, not now. I need to gather more evidence before I make a move, I said, my voice tight. But I'm going to confront him. He's not getting away with this. You're doing the right thing, she replied. But make sure you're safe, Sarah. This could escalate quickly. I ended the call and sat back, breathing deep. Everything had changed. The easy answers were gone, buried under the weight of the decisions I had to make. But one thing was clear. I wasn't backing down. It was time to confront him. And this time, I wouldn't let him silence me. I didn't know how to start, but I couldn't wait any longer. I had to do this now, while I still had the nerve. Dad was sitting in his chair in the living room, staring at the TV like he hadn't noticed me walking in. The room was quiet, almost too quiet, except for the hum of the air conditioning and the soft rustle of his magazine. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything I was about to say. Hey, Dad, I started, my voice calm but tight. We need to talk. He didn't look up, just grunted and flipped the page. About what? I crossed the room and stood in front of him. I wasn't going to back down. About Mom, about what's been happening. That got his attention. He set the magazine down and finally looked at me, a frown crossing his face. What do you mean? She's fine. She's not fine, Dad, I said, my hands shaking slightly, but I forced myself to stay steady. She's not fine. She's confused. You've been pushing her to sign things, and she doesn't even know what she's agreeing to. He let out a long sigh, rubbing his forehead like he was tired of hearing me complain. Sarah, you're overreacting. She's just forgetful. You know that. She's getting older. It's normal. Normal? I repeated, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. No, Dad, this isn't normal. You're taking advantage of her and you know it. He scoffed and leaned back in his chair, clearly annoyed. I'm just helping her, Sarah. She can't manage her own money anymore. Someone has to. You should be grateful I'm doing it. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, but I kept my voice low. That's not what this is. This is about you using her illness to get what you want. You've been getting her to sign documents, papers about her property, her retirement. You think I don't know what's going on? His face stiffened, the easygoing facade slipping away for just a moment. You don't know anything about it. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. She can't remember anything half the time. If I didn't do this, we'd be losing everything. I shook my head, my mind racing. You're not protecting her. You're taking advantage of her, Dad. She can't consent to this. She doesn't even understand what she's signing. She doesn't need to understand, he snapped, his voice rising. She can't remember, Sarah. She can't do anything anymore. I'm the one who's been taking care of everything, making sure we don't lose the house, the money. You should be thanking me for keeping it all together. I stepped forward, the anger building, but I wouldn't let him see me falter. That's not what you're doing, and you know it. You've been taking her savings, her property. She's too confused to say no. You've been pushing her to sign things she can't even remember. You don't get to play the hero here. He stood up then, his face flushed with frustration. You don't get it, Sarah. She's not the woman she used to be. I'm the one stuck with all the responsibility. Who else is going to do it? You think you could handle it better? You think you could take care of her? You have no idea what it's like. The room was too small now, too tight. I could feel the tension crackling between us, and for a moment, I was certain he was going to lose it completely. But I couldn't back down, not now. No, you're using her, I said, my voice cutting through the air. You're using her illness to control everything. And you think I'm just going to let you get away with it? His eyes narrowed, and he took a step closer, his jaw tight. You don't know what you're talking about. This is what needs to be done. You don't understand, Sarah. She can't handle things anymore. You want me to just let everything fall apart? I could feel my hands balling into fists, but I kept them by my sides. I don't want you to let anything fall apart. But I'm not going to sit here and watch you use her, Dad. You're manipulating her, and I can't let you keep doing that. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. I could see the anger in his face, the defiance, but also something else, a kind of coldness, like he knew he'd lost me. Then, finally, he spoke, his voice low and venomous. You think you're so much better than me, huh? You've got all the answers because you play social worker, but this is my family, Sarah, my life, and I'll do what I need to do to keep it from falling apart. You want to fight me on this? Go ahead. But you won't win. I stared at him, feeling the weight of his words like a slap. I'd never seen him like this, not in all the years I'd known him. The man who'd always been the one to protect us, to hold everything together, had just admitted to using my mother's condition for his own gain. And now, I was the enemy. I felt a chill settle over me as the truth hit hard. This wasn't just a disagreement anymore, it was a betrayal. And I knew deep down that no matter what I said, no matter what I did, he wouldn't back down. Not now. The silence between us stretched out, heavy and suffocating. My heart was racing, but my mind was already working ahead. This was only the beginning, and I wasn't going to stop until I protected my mother, no matter what it cost, even if it meant destroying everything else. The air in the house felt different after my confrontation with Dad. Tense, unforgiving. I could still feel the weight of his words, the way he'd dismissed me, the way he'd turned everything around to make it my fault. But I couldn't afford to let that stop me. Not now. I headed straight for Mom's desk in the corner of the kitchen, pulling open the drawer where I'd seen the financial papers before. I didn't even bother to check if she was awake. She had retreated to her room hours ago, and I was alone now, just like I had been so many times before, picking up the pieces, holding everything together. The papers were there, exactly where I'd left them. I spread them out on the table in front of me, my fingers trembling as I flicked through the documents. Property deeds, bank statements, power of attorney papers. I could feel my stomach tighten with every new page I turned, the weight of the truth sinking deeper. I had to make sure everything was documented. Every signature, every transfer, every piece of financial manipulation my father had put in motion. He'd been running things from the shadows, using her memory loss to carve out control over everything that mattered. Their house, her retirement, her savings. She had no idea what she'd signed, and neither did he. I grabbed my phone and began photographing each document, making sure the images were clear. I knew the importance of getting this right, down to the smallest detail. The last thing I needed was to give him any wiggle room when the time came to confront him again. Or worse, have it all dismissed as a mistake or misunderstanding. By the time I finished, it was well past midnight. I felt drained, my back aching from leaning over the table for hours. The weight of what I was doing pressed down on me, but there was no turning back. The more I looked at the papers, the more disgusted I felt. He'd been planning this for a long time, and I had no idea how far it had gone. I pulled out my notebook and began documenting everything I'd found. The accounts that had been transferred, the documents that seemed to have been signed under duress, the power of attorney papers that gave him authority over everything. There was no way he'd been honest about any of it. No way he'd told Mom what she was actually agreeing to. As I finished writing, I felt a wave of panic wash over me. This was bigger than I'd thought. This wasn't just about a couple of signatures or a misplaced document. He was taking everything, and he was doing it with her, using her, every step of the way. I couldn't afford to waste any more time. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through my contacts. The attorney I'd worked with before, Annie, was the only one who could help me figure out what to do next. She knew elder care law inside and out, and I needed someone who could guide me through the legal process. I tapped the phone icon and held it to my ear, pacing around the kitchen as the call rang through. The sound of the ring seemed to stretch on forever, and just as I was about to hang up, Annie answered. "Sarah?" she said, her voice steady but warm. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath. "I've got the evidence, Annie. My dad's been manipulating Mom's finances. He's been coercing her into signing things, property, retirement accounts, you name it. I have everything, the documents, the transfers, everything." There was a moment of silence on the other end. "Okay, you've done the right thing by gathering evidence. But this is serious, Sarah. If you're going to move forward, you'll need to involve the authorities. Financial abuse is a crime, and if he's coercing your mother, we need to make sure this is handled the right way." The weight of her words sank in. I knew she was right. It wasn't just a matter of confronting my father anymore. This was criminal, and if I didn't act, I'd be letting him get away with it. "I'm not letting him get away with this," I said, the words feeling stronger than I expected. "I'm going to have to call the police. I can't just sit on this." Annie's voice softened. "Sarah, I know this is hard, but you've got to do this by the book. Get everything in order, then we'll take it to the authorities. If you need help filing reports or handling this, I'm here for you." I nodded, though I knew she couldn't see it. "Thanks, Annie. I appreciate it." I hung up the phone and stood there for a moment, my mind racing. I was doing the right thing, I told myself. I was protecting my mom, getting her away from the man who'd been using her. But my stomach twisted at the thought of what was coming next, the confrontation, the fallout, the mess I was about to make of my own family. But I couldn't stop now. I couldn't let him keep doing this. I grabbed my phone one more time, my finger hovering over the number for the police. This wasn't just a family issue anymore. It was criminal, and if I had to bring everything crashing down to stop him, so be it. I pressed the call button, and this time, there was no turning back. The next morning, I woke up early, the weight of what I'd done the night before heavy on my chest. But there was no turning back now. I'd made the call. The police were on their way. I just had to confront him first. I wasn't sure what I expected from this last conversation, but I knew I wasn't leaving until I had answers. I'd arranged to meet with an officer at the house in the early afternoon. They would need time to gather everything, so I had a window. I could hear Dad in the kitchen, clattering around, probably making coffee like everything was normal. As if yesterday hadn't happened. As if he hadn't spent the last several months using my mother's illness to steal her future. I walked into the kitchen, standing in the doorway for a moment, taking him in. He didn't look up, just hummed a tune while he stirred the coffee. The same familiar movements, the same man. Except I knew what he was capable of now. "Dad," I said, my voice cutting through the quiet. He finally glanced up, a slight frown crossing his face. "What now, Sarah?" I took a deep breath, gathering all the resolve I had left. "I know what you've been doing, and I need you to stop." He set his mug down, looking at me like I was crazy. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the papers, Dad. The transfers, the property, the retirement accounts I stepped forward, pulling the stack of documents from my bag. You've been coercing Mom into signing things she doesn't understand. I have the proof." His face turned pale, his eyes darting to the papers in my hands before he stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You're insane." "That's not what's happening. I'm trying to protect her." "No, you're not. You're taking advantage of her. You're using her memory loss to control everything. You've been stealing from her, and you think I haven't noticed?" My voice shook, but I kept my focus on him, refusing to let him spin this any other way. He took a step back, his eyes flashing with anger. "You don't know what you're talking about. You think I'm trying to steal from her?" I've been doing all the heavy lifting. I'm the one who's been taking care of everything. I'm the one who's holding this family together while you. He stopped, his voice cracking. You just disappear into your job and leave me to clean up the mess. You think this is cleaning up? I shot back. You're manipulating her, and you know it. She's not here to protect herself, Dad. She can't fight you anymore. So I'm doing it for her. His face turned red, and he took a step toward me. You have no idea what it's like, he spat. You don't know what it's like to live with someone who doesn't remember shit half the time. I've had to do it all. I've kept this family from falling apart, and you're going to ruin it with your self-righteous crap? I stood my ground, feeling the fury and fear churn inside me. You've already ruined it. You're the one who's tearing this family apart. And now I'm going to stop you. I pulled out my phone and held it up to him. I've already contacted the police. They'll be here soon. You'll have to answer for this? His eyes widened in disbelief. For a split second, I saw the man who used to be my father, broken and terrified. But that lasted only a moment before the anger took over again. You think I'm scared of the police? You think I care what they do? You've got nothing, Sarah. Nothing to back up your accusations. I walked over to the desk and grabbed the evidence I'd compiled. The photos, the signed documents, the transfers. I spread them out in front of him. This is everything, Dad. This is what you've been doing to her. For a moment, he didn't move. His jaw tightened. His hand gripped the edge of the counter like he was holding himself together. And then the rage hit him, his face contorting in fury. You're a damn fool, he hissed. You're destroying everything. You think I'm the villain here? You think I'm the one hurting her? I stayed calm, even though my hands were shaking. Yes, you are. I turned and walked to the front door, my phone still in my hand. The knock came just as I reached the threshold. I opened the door to see two officers standing there, their expressions neutral but their eyes sharp. One of them stepped forward. Sarah? The officer asked. I nodded, still holding my phone, my gaze never leaving my father's. He's the one. He's been using her illness to manipulate her finances. The officer looked back at my father, who was standing stock still, his face twisted in disbelief. Sir, we're going to have to ask you to come with us. Are you out of your mind? My father shouted, stepping back. This is my family. You can't just... The officers moved in quickly, one of them reaching out to cuff him. His protest turned to curses as they guided him out of the house, his face red with rage, his voice getting louder the further they dragged him away. I stayed in the doorway, my heart pounding as I watched him go. I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. No, what I felt was emptiness, and a strange sense of relief. A few minutes later, another officer came inside and asked if I needed assistance with Mom. I nodded, my throat tight. She had been taken to a safe location while everything went down. It was the only option. The officer gave me a small, reassuring smile. She'll be in good hands. We'll make sure she gets the care she needs. I closed the door behind me, feeling the weight of the situation settle in. The anger hadn't disappeared, but there was a shift. I had done what needed to be done. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something else too. Empowerment. Even if it meant losing everything I thought I knew about my family, I had finally done the right thing. And that was all that mattered. The safe house was nothing like I'd imagined. It wasn't fancy, but it was quiet, peaceful in a way that felt unfamiliar. There was no shouting, no tension, just soft light filtering through the curtains and the gentle hum of a heater in the background. I settled Mom into an armchair by the window, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders, making sure she was comfortable. She'd barely spoken since the police took Dad away, but I could tell she was aware enough to know things had changed. She looked around the room with wide, uncertain eyes, her fingers curling tightly into the fabric of her sweater. I sat beside her, keeping my voice soft. It's okay, Mom. You're safe here. Everything's going to be all right. She didn't respond, but I saw her blink and nod, a faint flicker of recognition in her eyes. It was a relief to see her calm, even if just for a moment. The last few days had been a whirlwind. Dad's arrest, the police questioning, moving Mom out of the house. But I'd managed to get her settled into the new place without any trouble. Now the quiet felt like an invitation for everything to catch up to me. I couldn't escape the nagging weight in my chest, though. The trial was coming up fast. The police had already gathered everything they needed, and my lawyer had assured me I had a solid case. But it didn't make the decision any easier. Every time I thought about testifying, I felt the sting of betrayal. I stood up and walked over to the small kitchen area, pouring myself a glass of water. The glass shook slightly in my hand as I tried to steady myself. It felt like I was standing on a ledge, about to make a choice that would break something, maybe something unfixable. The phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at the screen and saw Annie's name, my lawyer. I answered quickly. Hey, Annie. How's your mom doing? Her voice was calm, but I could hear the tension underneath it. She's adjusting, I said, turning away from the counter, moving back toward Mom. It's hard for her to understand what happened, but she's doing okay. She's safe. Good. That's the most important thing, Annie replied. But we need to talk about the trial. We're getting closer, and I want to make sure you're ready. I felt my stomach tighten. I know, but I'm still not sure about testifying. I know I have enough evidence, but it feels wrong. I'm supposed to be his daughter. How do I do this? Annie didn't answer immediately. I could hear her breathing, then a long pause. Sarah, I get it. This isn't easy. It's not supposed to be. But you're doing the right thing. Your father made his choices, and he's hurt your mom in ways you can't ignore. You're not just protecting her. You're protecting yourself, too. You're standing up for what's right. I pressed my lips together, looking at Mom. She was staring out the window now, lost in thought. I know, but every time I think about it, I just feel conflicted. He's still my father, the man who raised me. I can't just forget that, no matter what he did. You don't have to forget it, Annie said, her voice gentle but firm. But you can't let that stop you from doing what's necessary. If you don't testify, if you don't hold him accountable, you're letting him win. And worse, you're letting him continue to take advantage of your mom. You can't let that happen. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. I know. The truth was, I did know. But the emotional tug of it all still felt like a weight I couldn't shake. Sarah, you have the power to change everything for your mom. You can make sure he never hurts her again, and you've got the evidence to back it up. This is about justice, not about your relationship with him anymore. It's about protecting her. I was quiet for a long time, the weight of her words sinking in. The truth had been gnawing at me from the moment I called the police. My father's actions had torn our family apart, and now I was the one who had to put everything back together, with or without him. I'll testify, I said, my voice thick. I can't let him get away with this. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure he doesn't hurt her again. Annie's voice softened, relieved. I'm proud of you, Sarah. You're doing the right thing. I hung up and stood there for a moment, feeling the gravity of what I had just decided. My father was about to face the consequences of his actions, and I would be the one to make sure that happened. But it was more than that. It wasn't just about him. It was about protecting Mom, about making sure she never had to endure any more of his manipulation. I turned back to Mom, sitting quietly in her chair. She hadn't moved, but I saw the tiredness in her face, the uncertainty still hanging in her eyes. I walked over to her and knelt down, taking her hand in mine. It's going to be okay, I said softly, though my voice didn't feel as steady as I wanted it to. I'll make sure he can't hurt you anymore. Mom blinked, still lost in her thoughts, but when she squeezed my hand, I felt a flicker of connection. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to remind me that I was doing the right thing. The trial was coming, and it was going to be hard. It was going to break something I wasn't sure I'd ever get back, but I couldn't let him off the hook. Not now. And as I looked at my mom, I knew that no matter what happened next, I couldn't let her down. Not again. The courtroom was cold, the kind of sterile cold that made everything feel far away, detached. The seats were packed with people. Some I recognized, others I didn't. My father sat there, his expression a mixture of defiance and disbelief. He looked like he didn't belong in this room, like he was still waiting for someone to tell him this was all just a misunderstanding. But I knew better. This was real. When it was my turn to testify, I felt the weight of everyone's eyes on me. I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks, but now that I was here, it felt different. My heart thudded in my chest, but I steadied my breath. I walked up to the stand and sat down, taking a deep breath. The prosecutor looked at me with a nod, silently urging me to begin. I focused on my mother's face, on the fragility I'd seen in her every day since this all started. I'm Sarah Miller, I began, my voice firm despite the knot in my stomach. I'm here because my father has been coercing my mother into signing financial documents she didn't understand. He's been using her illness to manipulate her finances, taking control of her assets, and pushing her to make decisions she couldn't remember making. I glanced at my father. He was staring straight ahead, his jaw tight. He didn't flinch, not yet. I continued, outlining the sequence of events. how he'd used her confusion against her, how he'd pushed her into signing over her retirement funds and property, how she didn't even know what she was agreeing to. The evidence was irrefutable. The documents, the transfers, the photos. I laid it all out. He made her think it was for her own good, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. But the truth is, he took advantage of her. He didn't care if she was confused. He only cared about controlling what was hers. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He wasn't used to being on the defensive. I saw the cracks starting to show. When the defense lawyer asked if I was sure of what I was saying, I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said, looking straight at him. I'm sure. I've seen the documents. I've seen the transfers. And most importantly, I've seen what it's done to her. It wasn't just the money. It was the toll it had taken on my mother's spirit, the woman who'd once been the backbone of our family, now nothing more than a shadow of herself. That was what mattered. By the time I finished, I could see my father's facade was crumbling. He tried to deny everything, to spin the narrative in his favor, but the truth was too heavy, too obvious. When the judge read the verdict, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. The words echoed in the courtroom, louder than any noise I'd heard in the past few weeks. Guilty of financial exploitation and elder abuse. My father's conviction was a bitter pill to swallow. He was led away in handcuffs, his face twisted with anger and disbelief. I didn't feel the rush of victory I thought I would. Instead, it was more like the relief after a long, drawn-out storm finally passed. There would be no more hiding, no more manipulation. Later that evening, I sat with Mom in her new apartment, the space still unfamiliar, but calming in its simplicity. She was quieter than usual, but there was a softness to her, a peace I hadn't seen in a long time. Are you okay? I asked her gently, sitting beside her on the couch. She looked at me, blinking slowly, and for the first time in a long while, I saw something like recognition in her eyes. I think so, sweetheart, she said softly. I think I'm going to be all right. I held her hand, squeezing it gently. The weight in my chest had lightened, just a little. There was still so much to rebuild, but in this moment, I knew I had done the right thing. As I sat there watching my mother, I felt a new sense of clarity. I had fought for her. I'd stood up for the woman who had always been there for me. No matter what it cost me, I knew I'd never back down again. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I could breathe.